practices change based on the seasons. So in the winter time, the dogs can't go out as long because it is quite cold. So, you know, their feet get colder a lot easier. So it's, you know, they go outside, they do their business, and most of the time they don't want to play outside at first because they're like, no, it's too cold. So then they come back in. But in the summer times, they're more likely to stay outside for longer. Again, we still have to monitor because if it gets too hot, they can overheat really easily. So you just kind of base it based on the weather. So if it's below minus 25, they don't stay out long because we don't want their paws to freeze. And if it's above 25, again, you don't want them to stay out long because then they can overheat. Depends on the dog. So to dress the dogs, you can put some boots on or you can put them in some little jackets. But then again, some dogs hate boots. So most time if they hate boots, then a jacket's really good and then just short walks. But if they like boots and jackets, then they can go on a little longer walks because they are more dressed for the winter. When it's too cold to go outside, we like to give them more interactive toys. So whether that's a Kong and you throw some cookies in there, so then they are still stimulated and they have to work for their toys, so they can still get really tired, but just not in the physical way, more mentally. Do we just give them more, you know, more challenging toys in the winter time just to keep them more active? Avoiding risks such as freezing their little toes. It's always a good idea not to give them baths in the winter time, or if you do give them baths, give them a really, really good long period before going outside so that they don't freeze their entire bodies or their hairs freeze where they get even colder, maybe risk of hypothermia. Exercising, again, not being outside for too long. Try not to make them, you know, go for runs because like just with humans, our lungs can freeze. So sometimes that is a risk for dogs as well. We normally don't, just because out in our yard, it's more for going outside for walks where we would put boots and jackets on, just because they're out in the yard, they're doing their business and they're coming back in. If they're playing outside, if they don't want to stay outside, or if they don't want to come back inside, we try to be like, okay, you know, it's time to come back inside because it's quite cold. But most of the time the dogs do let us know. They're like, okay, I'm cold. They put up a paw, or they go to the door and they're like, we're ready to come inside. So our dogs are really good with letting us know when they're ready to come inside. And they are really good at listening. When it's like, okay, it's time to come back inside because it's really cold. A good tip is just to, you know, keep an eye on your dog for sure outside in the yard, especially if it is cold and you don't want to go outside. Always keeping an eye on them, making sure that if they are putting their paw up, bring them on inside, and again, making sure that they don't go past 5-10 minutes outside when it's really, really cold.